My name is Thea Lindgren. I'm 32. Last Saturday at my sister's wedding reception, 200 guests watched a screen flash 6 words about me: infertile, divorced, failure, high school dropout, broke, alone. And every single person in that room laughed. My dad raised his glass. My mom swirled her wine like she was at a tasting, not a public execution. My sister leaned into the mic and said, "Don't laugh too hard. She might actually cry." They thought that was the worst thing that could happen to me that night. They were wrong, because I had my phone in my hand, and I typed one word, just one. And I promise you, by the end of this story, you'll understand why that word changed everything. Before I take you back to the beginning, if you enjoy stories like this, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely want to come along for the ride. And drop your location and local time in the comments. I love knowing where you're listening from. Now, let me take you back 15 years, to the day I came home from school and found my future packed into a trash bag by the front door. I was 17, junior year. I had a 3.6 GPA and a stack of college brochures on my desk, 3 of them circled in red. I walked through the front door that afternoon, and the first thing I noticed was the quiet. My mom, Gloria, was sitting at the kitchen table with her reading glasses on, sorting through papers. My dad, Ray, was in his recliner, pretending to watch the news. And my sister Vanessa, 13 at the time, was upstairs. Her music was loud enough to rattle the ceiling fan. "Sit down, Thea," my mom said. "No hello. No how was school. Just sit down." She slid a brochure across the table. Whitmore Academy, a private school about 40 minutes outside town. "Vanessa got accepted," she said. "We're enrolling her in the fall." I stared at the tuition page. "That's $14,000 a year. That's my college fund." "We've discussed it." "You discussed it without me?" My dad shifted in his chair. He didn't look up. "Vanessa needs it more, sweetheart. She's struggling in public school. You'll figure it out. You always land on your feet." I stood there, holding a brochure to a school my sister would attend with money my grandparents had saved for me. $14,000. 4 years of birthday checks and Christmas envelopes from Grandpa Earl, all earmarked for my future. "And what about my future?" I asked. My mom took off her glasses. "Don't be dramatic." That night, I packed one bag, $83 from my nightstand drawer, birthday money I hadn't deposited yet. I left my key on the kitchen counter. The last thing my mother said to me as I walked out: "You'll be back. You always need us." I didn't go back. I slept on my friend Kayla's pull-out couch for 2 months. Her mom, a nurse who worked double shifts, never once asked me to leave. She just left an extra plate on the counter every night and said, "Eat." I got my GED at 18, walked into the testing center on a Tuesday morning with a number 2 pencil, and walked out with a certificate that said I was allowed to keep going. I waitressed at Briarwood Diner. Breakfast shift, 4 a.m. to noon. Tips were better in the morning. People are more generous before the day disappoints them. I enrolled at Millbrook Community College that fall. Financial aid covered tuition. I covered everything else with 2 jobs, the diner and stocking shelves at a hardware store 3 nights a week. That's where I met Jolene Marsh. She sat next to me in Intro to Business, smelled like motor oil because she worked at her uncle's auto shop, and had this way of looking at you like she was already 2 steps ahead of whatever you were about to say. "You look like you haven't slept in a week," she told me on day 1. "I haven't." "Cool, neither have I. We'll be friends." She wasn't wrong. Meanwhile, back home, my mother had her own version of events. She told the neighbors, the church group, anyone who'd listen. "Thea left because she's stubborn. We tried everything. Some kids just don't want to be helped." Vanessa started at Whitmore that fall. New uniforms, new backpack, my college fund, walking through someone else's doors. I didn't think about it. I couldn't afford to. I thought the hardest part was behind me. until I met Marcus. Marcus Delaney was 23 when I met him. Tall, charming, the kind of confident that feels like safety when you've never had much of it. I was 20, working full-time, taking classes part-time, and so tired that when someone held the door open and said, "After you," it felt like love. We married when I was 21, small ceremony, courthouse steps. Jolene was my witness, and she didn't say a word against it, but I caught the look she gave Marcus when he forgot to hold my hand for the photo. We tried for a baby almost immediately. Marcus wanted kids. I wanted kids. Month after month, nothing. After 2 years, I went to a doctor alone. He said we needed more testing, both of us. Marcus refused. "There's nothing wrong with me," he said. "Maybe there's something wrong with you." He said that sentence 6 times over the next year. I counted. The fights got worse. He started staying out later, coming home smelling like bourbon and someone else's perfume. When I confronted him, he said, "Can you blame me? I married a woman who can't even give me a child." We divorced when I was 24. He told everyone in town the same story. She couldn't give me kids. What was I supposed to do? 9 months after our divorce was finalized, Marcus's new girlfriend had a baby boy. So either the problem was never as simple as he claimed, or the universe has a dark sense of humor. My family's response to my divorce? My mother called once, one time. She said, "I told you so." My father said nothing. I was 24, divorced, standing in an empty apartment. And that was the exact moment I decided no one would ever define me again. I went back to school. Not community college this time. I transferred to state. Full course load, financial aid, and a stubbornness that could bend steel. I graduated at 26 with a degree in business administration. Cum laude. Nobody from my family was in the audience. I didn't send an announcement. There was no one to send it to. I took a job at a small real estate development firm in Ridgemont, 20 miles from my hometown. Learned everything: zoning permits, contractor negotiations, market analysis, how to read a P&L sheet at 2 in the morning when nothing makes sense and you're running on coffee and spite. At 27, I called Jolene. She was managing her uncle's auto shop by then, hating every minute of it, and answering the phone with, "What now?" as a greeting. "I'm starting a company," I said. "Property development. I need a VP who isn't afraid of spreadsheets or contractors." "I'm afraid of neither. When do I start?" "Crestline Property Development." That was the name. Jolene picked it, said it sounded like something that belonged on a building, not a business card. We started small. One foreclosure in Elmdale. Bought it for $62,000, renovated it in 4 months, sold it for $145,000, then another, then 3 at once. 5 years later, Crestline managed 3 residential development projects and employed 12 people. Revenue hit 7 figures. I kept my name off the website, off the marketing, off everything public-facing. Jolene was the face. Our attorney, Bill Wexler, handled legal correspondence. I didn't hide because I was ashamed. I hid because I wanted to be judged by the work, not by whatever story my family had been telling about me for 15 years. And then the universe played its hand. Our biggest project, Maplewood Commons, 40 residential units on 12 acres outside of town, a $3.2 million build, Crestline's most ambitious undertaking, and we needed a general contractor with local crews and a solid reputation. The best option within 100 miles? Patterson Construction. Owned by Frank Patterson, who happened to be the father of Derek Patterson, who happened to be engaged to my sister Vanessa. I didn't plan it. The market did. Jolene sent the letter of intent on my behalf. All communication went through her. Frank Patterson never met the owner of Crestline. He just knew the numbers looked incredible, and the LOI was the biggest contract his company had ever been offered. Frank celebrated loudly. He told the Rotary Club. He told the guys at the hardware store. He told the Lindgrens. And that's when something clicked for my mother. I didn't know it yet, but Gloria started pushing for Vanessa's wedding to happen fast. Before the LOI became a signed contract. Before the ink dried. Because in my mother's mind, if Vanessa married into the Patterson family, The connection between the two families would be cemented. The deal would be untouchable. Financial security, not through her own effort, but through her daughter's marriage. I only learned this later, from a conversation Derek relayed to me. My mother had told my father over dinner, "When Vanessa is a Patterson, that deal is locked in. Our retirement, Ray, think about it." My father, as always, said nothing. So there it was. My company's money, funneled through a contract, propping up the very wedding where I'd be seated at the worst table in the room. Irony doesn't get sharper than that. But I didn't know the sharpest part yet. The invitation arrived in a cream envelope with gold foil edges. Vanessa Lindgren and Derek Patterson. I hadn't received more than 3 text messages from my sister in 2 years, and now she wanted me at her wedding. Jolene was sitting across from me at the office when I opened it. She watched my face and said, "Don't. It's my sister's wedding." "It's a setup, Thea. They don't invite you to family dinners. They don't call on your birthday. But they want you at the one event where 200 people will watch them be perfect." She wasn't wrong. She rarely was. But there was a part of me, a small, stubborn 17-year-old part, that still wanted to walk into a room full of Lindgrens and be seen. Not as the dropout, not as the divorcee, just as Thea. I accepted, but I prepared. "If I text you begin," I told Jolene that night, "I need you to do 2 things. First, send the LOI withdrawal email to Patterson Construction, the one Bill already drafted. Second, call Tyler." Tyler Briggs, our AV contractor. We'd hired him for 3 Crestline events. Reliable, discreet, and currently booked by the Pattersons to run the audiovisual setup at Oak Ridge Country Club for the reception. I prepped a slide deck, 6 slides. Tyler has the USB. If I text begin, he switches the feed. Jolene looked at me for a long time. "And if you don't text it?" "Then I'll come home, take off a nice dress, and pretend I had a lovely evening." She poured 2 glasses of bourbon. "I hope you don't need it." "Yeah," I said. "Me too." I drove to the church the next afternoon in the best dress I'd ever owned, and a ticking bomb in my pocket. The ceremony was at St. Andrew's. I sat in the last pew, behind a woman in a lavender hat who smelled like gardenias. Nobody from my family acknowledged me. I watched my father walk Vanessa down the aisle with the kind of proud, teary-eyed expression he'd never once aimed in my direction. The reception was at Oak Ridge Country Club, white linens, string lights, a band playing soft jazz. 200 guests. Fresh hydrangeas on every table except mine. Table 14, back corner, beside the hallway to the restrooms. The flowers were silk. The chairs wobbled. My table mates, 2 of my father's old fishing buddies who didn't recognize me, a distant cousin who'd been sober for 3 weeks and was clearly struggling, and an empty seat. My mother passed by on her way to the head table. She paused, looked at my dress and said, "Oh, you came. That's a pretty dress. Sale rack?" My father squeezed my shoulder. "Glad you made it, sweetheart." Then he kept walking. Vanessa didn't come over at all. She glanced at me once from across the room, the kind of look you give a stain on the carpet. I sat down, adjusted my napkin, told myself I'd give it an hour. Then a woman appeared at my elbow, older, silver-haired, wearing a blazer over a blue dress. She wrapped me in a hug before I could stand up. "Thea Lindgren, my goodness, it's been years." Mrs. Carol Whitfield, my junior-year English teacher, now on the town council. She sat in the empty chair beside me and said, "I heard about that Crestline project, Maplewood. The council's very excited about it." I smiled. Didn't confirm, didn't deny, just smiled. She patted my hand. "Some things speak for themselves, dear." The speeches started at 7:30. My mother went first. She stood at the mic in a champagne-colored dress that probably cost more than my rent used to, and she talked about Vanessa like she was narrating a highlight reel. "My daughter, the light of our family, the first to graduate from college, the proof that when parents invest in the right place, the results speak for themselves." I felt Mrs. Whitfield's hand tighten on my arm. Gloria went on. How Vanessa excelled at Whitmore Academy. How she graduated from state with honors. How she found Derek, the perfect partner from the perfect family. Every sentence was a brushstroke painting Vanessa as the sun, and by implication, everything else, everyone else, as shadow. She never said my name, but she didn't have to. Every compliment was a comparison. Then my father. He kept it short. He raised his glass and said, Vanessa, you are the greatest thing I've ever done. The room clapped. I didn't. A woman at a nearby table leaned to her husband and whispered something while glancing at me. I couldn't hear it, but I could read the pity in her eyes. The whole room knew about the Lindgren sisters, the shining one and the gone one. Mrs. Whitfield leaned close. Are you all right? I'm fine. You don't have to be. I know, but I am. I wasn't. My hands were pressed flat against my thighs under the table, fingers white. 15 years of silence, and my father just told a room full of people that his greatest accomplishment was the daughter he'd funded with my future. I reached for my water glass. Steady hand, steady breath. I thought that was the worst of it, but Vanessa was already walking toward the stage with a smile that had too many teeth. Okay, everyone! Vanessa grabbed the mic like a woman who'd been waiting for this moment her entire life. Before we cut the cake, I want to do something fun. A little family roast. The crowd laughed. Derek, sitting beside the cake table, shifted in his chair. He smiled, but his eyes darted to his father, then to me. Something about his face told me he didn't know what was coming either. Most of you know my big sister Thea. Vanessa pointed across the room to table 14. Stand up, Thea. I didn't move. Shy as always. More laughter. Vanessa tilted her head, performing concern. My sister taught me so much growing up. Mostly, what not to do. A ripple of chuckles, a few uncomfortable ones. One woman near the bar covered her mouth. I mean, I love her, I do. But let's be honest, Thea's life has been educational. She paused for timing. Professional. Like she'd rehearsed. So I put together a little visual aid, just for fun. She turned toward the DJ booth and winked. Hit it. I looked at Derek. He was staring at his wife with an expression I recognized. The face of someone realizing they're watching a car accident and it's too late to brake. My mother, at the head table, lifted her wine glass. A small, satisfied nod. My father leaned back, half smiling, ready to be entertained. The 60-inch screen behind the stage flickered to life. And there it was. The first word hit like a slap. Infertile. Then the next. Divorced. Then faster. Failure. High school dropout. Broke. Alone. Each word had a graphic. A broken wedding ring. An empty crib. A graduation cap with a red X through it. An empty wallet. A silhouette sitting alone. 200 people stared at the screen. And then, they laughed. I need to pause here for a second. You know that feeling, sitting in a room full of people and every single one of them is laughing, and you are the reason? Not laughing with you, at the worst things that have ever happened to you, projected on a screen in full color with clip art. If this story is hitting something real for you right now, hit that like button. Not for me. For every time you sat in silence when you shouldn't have had to. And subscribe if you want to stay for the part where I take the wheel back, because it's coming. All right. Where were we? Right. 200 people laughing, my sister smirking into the mic, and my phone sitting heavy in my hand. Vanessa leaned into the mic. Don't laugh too hard. She might actually cry. The room erupted again, louder this time. Someone at table 6 clapped. My mother swirled her wine with her pinky raised, the kind of small, rehearsed gesture that told me she'd known about this slide. She'd approved it. Maybe she'd helped design it. My father smiled, not a cruel smile, worse. A comfortable one. The smile of a man who had spent 58 years avoiding conflict, by letting other people bleed. "Just a joke, sweetheart," he called across the room to me. Casual, like he was commenting on the weather. I looked at the screen. 6 words. Each one a piece of my life torn out, flattened, laminated, and projected in high definition for 200 strangers to consume with their champagne and shrimp cocktails. Infertile. As if the 2 years I spent crying in doctors' offices were a punchline. Divorced. As if Marcus walking out on me was a character flaw I chose. Failure. As if surviving on $83 and a GED was something to be ashamed of. The laughter settled into murmurs. A few people were still chuckling. Most had moved on to refilling their glasses. For them, it was entertainment. A blip between the appetizers and the cake. They'd forget it by Monday. But I wouldn't. Mrs. Whitfield put her hand on my shoulder. Firm, warm. She leaned in close and said, "Thea, you don't have to sit through this." I looked at her. Then I looked at my mother, still smiling. My father, still comfortable. Vanessa, still holding the mic like a trophy. And I thought, 15 years. I waited 15 years to see if this family could change. The answer is on that screen. I felt 200 pairs of eyes. Not one of them saw me. My phone buzzed in my lap. Jolene. One text. "I'm watching Tyler's live stream. Say the word." I read it twice. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. Around me, the reception was already moving on. The DJ cued a slow song. A few couples drifted toward the dance floor. Vanessa handed the mic back to the best man, who was nervously shuffling cue cards. The slideshow still glowed behind the stage. 6 words, frozen in place, because no one had bothered to turn it off. I looked at my father. He was taking a photo of the slideshow with his phone, smiling at it like it was a family vacation snapshot he wanted to keep. I looked at my mother. She was leaning toward the woman beside her, gesturing at the screen, explaining something. I could read her lips. We tried to help her, but she just kept self-destructing. I looked at Frank Patterson, the groom's father. He was laughing with a man I didn't recognize, pointing casually at the screen. 2 businessmen, amused by someone else's wreckage. Then I looked at the screen one more time. Infertile, divorced, failure, high school dropout, broke, alone. Every word was wrong. Every word was a lie my family had been telling so long they'd stopped checking if it was true. And now they'd broadcast it to everyone who mattered in this town, including 3 or 4 people who knew the name Crestline but had never connected it to me. If I walked out quietly, this would become the only story anyone remembered. Thea Lindgren, the sister who sat in the back, took the hit and disappeared. I opened my phone, typed 5 letters. Begin. Sent. I set the phone on the table, screen down, and I waited. Nothing happened right away. The best man was mid-speech, something about Derek's fantasy football league and how marriage was the ultimate draft pick. Polite laughter. Vanessa was standing beside Derek now, hand on his arm, glowing. The slideshow was still up. My 6 words, burning quietly in the background like wallpaper nobody had the decency to take down. Then Vanessa took the mic again. She wasn't done. "You know, Thea actually tried to cook Thanksgiving dinner once," she said, leaning into the crowd's energy. "Set off every smoke alarm in the house. Fire department showed up. Dad had to apologize to 3 neighbors. More laughter. My father shook his head, grinning. My mother dabbed at her eyes like she was laughing so hard she'd started to cry. I sat very still, my hands flat on the table, my breathing even. Mrs. Whitfield whispered, "Thea." "Wait," I said. And then the screen blinked, just once. A quick flash of black, like a power hiccup. Vanessa glanced back. Tech issues?" She laughed it off, turned back to the crowd. "Anyway, as I was..." The screen went dark, fully dark. No slideshow, no graphics, no words. 3 seconds of nothing. The room shifted. People looked up from their plates. The band stopped mid-note. Vanessa tapped the mic. "Hello? Can someone fix the... The screen lit up again. But it wasn't the same slide. It wasn't my 6 words. It was something else entirely. And for the first time that night, my sister stopped talking. The first slide filled the screen slowly. Clean white background. Professional font. No clip art. No broken rings or empty cribs. Just a question. High school dropout? And beneath it, a photograph. My GED certificate, dated the year I turned 18. Next to it, a diploma. Bachelor of Science in Business Administration, cum laude. My name in black ink across the center. The murmurs started immediately. Second slide. Broke? The Crestline Property Development logo appeared. Clean navy and white. Beneath it, founder and CEO. Below that, an architectural rendering of Maplewood Commons. 40 units, 12 acres. The project that half the room had heard about, but none of them had connected to the quiet woman at table 14. A man at table 3 leaned forward. I recognized him. Glenn Avery, a local realtor. His mouth opened slightly. He turned to his wife and said something I couldn't hear. Third slide. Failure? A photograph. Me, standing at a podium, accepting the Ridgemont Chamber of Commerce Small Business of the Year Award. 2 years ago. A plaque in my hand. Jolene clapping in the front row. Nobody in my family had been there. Nobody had known. Fourth slide. Alone? A group photo. Me with the Crestline team. 12 employees, standing in front of our office, grinning. Jolene beside me, arms crossed, looking exactly like someone who would run through a wall for you without being asked. The room was silent. Completely silent. Not the polite waiting for the next joke kind. The kind where 200 people are recalculating everything they thought they knew. Vanessa stood on the stage with the mic still in her hand. Her lips were parted, but no sound came out. My mother's wine glass was frozen halfway to her mouth. I stood up. The chair scraped against the floor, and the sound carried across the silent room like a crack in glass. Every head turned. 200 faces, some confused, some embarrassed. A few, like Mrs. Whitfield, watching me with something that looked a lot like pride. I walked from table 14 toward the stage, slowly, not rushing, not dramatic, just walking the way you walk when you've spent 15 years earning the right to take up space. I didn't take the mic from Vanessa. I stopped beside her and spoke. The mic was still live, pinned to the stand between us, and it caught every word. 6 words, I said. That's how my family sees me. I wanted to show you 6 different ones. The 5th slide appeared behind me. Survivor, graduate, founder, employer, standing, here. A breath moved through the room. Someone at a far table whispered, "Oh my God." I turned to my sister. She looked smaller now. The stage lights were doing her no favors. "I didn't come here to ruin your wedding, Vanessa. I came because I wanted to believe this family could be different." I paused. "You just showed me the answer." My mother shot to her feet. "Thea, what are you doing? This is your sister's day." I looked at her, steady, no heat. It is her day, and she chose to spend it humiliating me in front of everyone we know. That was her choice, not mine. Derek was staring at Vanessa, his jaw tight, his hands flat on the table. He hadn't known. I could see it in the way his eyes kept moving between the old slideshow's ghost and the new one on the screen. He whispered something to her, low, sharp. She didn't answer. "I didn't ruin your wedding, Vanessa. You used your wedding to ruin me. The difference matters." Frank Patterson was the first person in the room to do the math. He'd been sitting at the head table with a bourbon in his hand and the comfortable grin of a man whose construction company had just landed the biggest deal of its life. But when that Crestline logo hit the screen, navy and white, the same logo on every email Jolene had sent him for the past 4 months, his grin vanished. He stood up. His chair knocked against the table behind him. "Wait a minute." His voice was loud enough to cut through the murmurs. "Crestline? You're the one behind Crestline?" I turned to face him. "I'm Thea Lindgren." I own Crestline Property Development. And yes, Maplewood Commons is my project. The whispers turned into a wave. People leaning to each other, connecting the dots out loud. Crestline. That's the Maplewood deal. That's Frank's contract. She owns it? Frank's face went from white to gray. He looked at my mother, and his voice came out like gravel. Did you know about this, Gloria? Did you know and you still let this happen? My mother's mouth opened and closed. I didn't. I had no idea. You had no idea your own daughter ran a company worth millions? She never told us. Maybe, Frank said, his voice low and dangerous. You never asked. Derek was standing now, too. He looked at Vanessa, then at his father, then at the screen still glowing with the Crestline logo. His face was the face of a man watching his wedding become a crime scene. My father was still sitting. He'd put his glass down. His hands were in his lap. He looked old, not tired old, but caught old. The look of a man who had run out of places to hide. Frank's phone buzzed. He pulled it from his jacket pocket, still staring at me, and glanced down at the screen. I watched the color drain from his face in real time, like someone had pulled a plug. What is this? He said. Check your email, Mr. Patterson. He opened it. I didn't need to see the screen. I knew what it said. Jolene had sent it at 9:47 p.m., exactly as planned. A formal notice from Crestline Property Development. The letter of intent for Maplewood Commons had been withdrawn. Reason cited. Reassessment of partnership suitability. Frank read it twice. Then a third time. His hand was shaking slightly. You can't do this. His voice cracked. We've already hired 8 additional crew members. We put down deposits on materials. $120,000. A letter of intent isn't a binding contract, Mr. Patterson. Your attorney would have told you that before you committed resources to an unsigned deal. This is personal. No, your son's wife just projected my most painful experiences on a screen for entertainment. Choosing not to do business with that family isn't personal, it's due diligence. Vanessa grabbed Derek's arm. She's destroying everything. Do something. Derek pulled his arm free, slowly, deliberately. He looked at her and said, quiet enough that only the nearby tables could hear. You told me the slideshow was harmless fun, Vanessa. For the first time all night, Vanessa didn't have a comeback. My mother was gripping the edge of the table. She tried to speak. You ungrateful. After everything we... But my father reached over and put his hand on her wrist. Gloria, he said, stop. It was the first useful thing he'd said in 15 years. Then Mrs. Whitfield stood up. She didn't rush. She pushed her chair back, adjusted her blazer, and walked toward the front of the room with the kind of unhurried authority that only comes from decades of teaching teenagers to sit down and pay attention. The room parted for her, not because she demanded it, but because she was Carol Whitfield, and in this town, that meant something. If you'll indulge me for a moment, she said, and her voice carried without a mic. My name is Carol Whitfield. I sit on the town council, and I taught Thea Lindgren in my junior English class before she had to leave school. She looked directly at my mother. Gloria, I remember you telling me, and half the PTA, that Thea dropped out because she was stubborn, because she didn't want to be helped. She paused. Let the silence do its work. But I taught that girl. She was the best writer in my class. She turned in every assignment early. She stayed after school to revise her papers. She didn't leave because she was stubborn. She left because she had to. Gloria's face went rigid. Mrs. Whitfield turned to the room. I also sat on the council review board when Crestline submitted the Maplewood Commons proposal. I can tell you, it's one of the most thoroughly prepared, community-minded development plans this town has ever seen. She looked at me. Her eyes were warm, and I felt something crack inside my chest. The part I'd kept sealed for 15 years. Some things speak for themselves, she said, and so do some people. A few guests began to clap, scattered at first, then more. Not thunderous, not a standing ovation, just enough to let me know that 200 people had stopped laughing and started listening. My eyes were wet for the first time all night. "Thank you, Mrs. Whitfield." She nodded once, like the matter was settled, and sat back down. "I know a lot of you want to know what happened next, how my family reacted, what happened to Patterson Construction, whether Vanessa ever apologized. I promise, we're getting there. But before I continue, I want to ask you something. If you know someone in your life who always gets seated at table 14, the person who's always the punchline, who always gets overlooked, share this video with them. Sometimes knowing that someone else understands is enough to change a day. And it's free. Link's right there. All right, let's keep going. I picked up my clutch from the table, slid my phone inside, straightened my dress. Then I walked toward the exit. I didn't run. I didn't storm out. I walked the same way I'd walked in, back straight, chin level, heels clicking on the hardwood at a pace that said I was leaving on my own terms. My mother caught up to me at the coat check. "Thea!" Her hand grabbed my elbow. Her fingers were cold. "You cannot walk out like this. You're tearing this family apart." I stopped, turned around, looked at her. "Which family, Mom? The one that projected 6 words about my worst moments on a 60-inch screen? Or the one that never once called when I got divorced? Never once asked if I was okay?" "I tried to." "You called once. You said, 'I told you so.' That's not trying." Her chin trembled. "I sacrificed everything for you girls. You sacrificed my college fund for Vanessa. That's not everything. That's a choice. And tonight was another choice." My father appeared behind her. His tie was loosened. He looked like a man who'd just been told the house was on fire but couldn't find the door. "Thea, please. We can talk about this, as a family." I looked at him, the man who'd spent my entire childhood choosing peace over me. "You had 15 years to talk, Dad. You chose silence every single time. Tonight, I'm choosing it too." I turned around and kept walking. Through the double doors, past the valet stand, into the parking lot where the air was cool and the sky was full of stars that didn't care about any of this. Behind me, the music had stopped. The reception was over in every way that mattered. I made it to my car before my hands started shaking. Not the dramatic kind, the quiet kind, the kind that only happens when your body finally catches up with what your brain just did. I sat in the driver's seat, engine off, staring at the steering wheel. The parking lot was half empty. Inside the country club, I could see shadows moving behind the curtained windows. People standing, talking, gesturing. The kind of commotion that happens when a wedding reception becomes a story people will tell for years. I called Jolene. She picked up on the first ring. "Done. LOI withdrawal went out at 9:47. Bill CC'd the attorney's office for documentation. It's clean." I didn't say anything for a few seconds. "Thea, you there?" "I'm here." "Are you okay?" I leaned my head back against the headrest, closed my eyes. The parking lot was quiet except for a cricket somewhere in the hedgerow and the distant thump of music the DJ had apparently restarted, as if champagne and a beat could undo what just happened. "I'm okay," I said. "For the first time in 15 years, I think I'm actually okay." "Good." A pause. "You want to get something to eat? I know a faux place that's open until 11. I laughed. It came out rough and surprised, like it had been stored somewhere dusty and forgotten. The first real laugh of the night. "Yeah, I'd like that." I started the car, pulled out of the lot. Didn't look back at the country club. Didn't check my mirror for anyone running after me. Nobody was. My phone lit up on the passenger seat. A text from Derek Patterson. "I'm sorry. I didn't know about the slideshow until it played. I should have stopped it." I read it once, set the phone down, and drove. In a small town, news doesn't travel. It detonates. By Sunday morning, not even 12 hours after I'd driven out of that parking lot, my phone had 43 text messages from numbers I didn't recognize, 11 missed calls, and a Facebook notification that the Oak Ridge Community Forum had 217 new comments on a post titled, Did anyone else see what happened at the Patterson-Lindgren wedding last night? I didn't read the comments. Jolene did. She called me at 8 a.m. with a coffee in one hand and her phone in the other, reading highlights aloud like a sportscaster. Okay, listen to this one. Gloria Lindgren told me 3 years ago that Thea dropped out because she was too lazy to study. Turns out the girl owns Crestline. I bought my house in a Crestline development. I shook Jolene's hand at closing. That was her company? Next one. I sat at table 9. I laughed at that slideshow. I feel sick about it now. And this gem. Gloria has been running her mouth about that girl for 15 years. Now the whole town knows who the real failure is. I stirred my coffee and said nothing. There's more, Jolene said. A lot more. People are sharing their own stories about your mom. Apparently she told Brenda Walsh at the church bake sale that you were practically homeless and living off government assistance. I was on financial aid for college. Same thing to Gloria. My mother called 7 times that Sunday. I let everyone go to voicemail. She left 2 messages. The first was angry. You need to fix this, Thea. People are talking. The second, an hour later, was quieter. Call me back, please. I didn't. Monday morning, Frank Patterson called Jolene's office line at 7:02 a.m., before the coffee had even finished brewing. I need a meeting with the owner of Crestline. Today. Jolene kept her voice level. Ms. Lindgren will reach out when she's available. Available? I've got 8 new hires sitting in a parking lot with no project to report to. I've got $120,000 in material deposits that are non-refundable. You tell Ms. Lindgren that available isn't going to cut it. I understand your frustration, Mr. Patterson, but a letter of intent is not a binding agreement. Your counsel would confirm that. We'll be in touch. She hung up. Frank didn't take it well. By Tuesday, the word around town was that Patterson Construction was scrambling. The Maplewood contract had been their pipeline for the entire year. Without it, Frank was staring at payroll he couldn't cover and deposits he couldn't recover. He'd overcommitted, hired crew, ordered lumber, leased equipment, all on the strength of an unsigned deal. That was Frank's mistake, not mine. He called my father that afternoon. I know because Ray called me an hour later. First time he'd dialed my number in over a year. Thea, Frank Patterson is losing his mind. You need to reconsider this. I don't need to do anything, Dad. He's talking about lawyers. He doesn't have a case and he knows it. An LOI isn't a contract. Silence. Then, this is going to ruin your sister's marriage. No, Dad. Vanessa projecting my infertility on a screen at her own reception is what's ruining her marriage. I just stopped subsidizing it. He hung up without saying goodbye. That part, at least, was familiar. Derek moved to the guest bedroom that week. The honeymoon was postponed indefinitely. Wednesday evening. I was sitting at my kitchen table with a stack of contractor proposals. Hargrove Brothers out of Ridgemont had submitted a strong bid for Maplewood when the doorbell rang. My mother stood on the porch. No makeup, hair pulled back in a clip. She looked 10 years older than she had on Saturday. We need to talk, she said. I didn't invite her in. I stepped onto the porch and closed the door behind me. Frank Patterson is threatening to go public. He says you sabotaged his business. Frank overextended on an unsigned deal. That's not sabotage. That's poor planning. I'm not talking about the law, Thea. Her voice cracked. I'm talking about family. Family. I let the words sit between us. Mom, you helped plan a slideshow that called me infertile in front of 200 people. You don't get to say family right now. Her eyes went red. I didn't know it would be like that. You did. Vanessa tagged you in the group chat when she was building it. I've seen the screenshots. She went very still. The kind of still that happens when a person realizes their version of events has just been disassembled in front of them. Vanessa sent me. She said it was just a few jokes. You saw the words, Mom. You approved them. You sat in that room, and you smiled. She started to cry. Real tears, maybe. Or maybe the kind she'd perfected over decades. the tears that came out whenever the conversation got too close to accountability. Mom, I kept my voice even. I don't hate you, but I can't let you keep doing this. This is a boundary, and this time, it's not changing. I stepped back inside and closed the door. Gently. No slam. Just a click. Some boundaries don't need to be loud. Thursday. My phone rang at noon. Vanessa. I almost didn't answer. But something in me, maybe curiosity, maybe exhaustion, maybe the last sliver of sisterhood that hadn't been scraped off, made me pick up. Her voice was raw, stripped of the performance. Derek's been talking to a divorce attorney. Did you know that? I didn't. Well, he is. Because of you. Because of what you did at the reception. Are you happy now? I leaned against the kitchen counter and looked out the window. My neighbor's kid was riding a bicycle in circles on the sidewalk, completely unbothered by the world. Derek's talking to an attorney because he found out his wife humiliated her own sister for entertainment at their wedding. That's not because of me, Vanessa. That's because of you. It was a joke. Infertile, divorced, failure. I said each word slowly, deliberately, the way they'd been projected on that screen. Those aren't jokes. Those are the worst things that ever happened to me, and you turned them into party decorations for 200 people. Silence on the line. Then quieter. You always have to be the victim. I'm not the victim, Vanessa. I'm the person who finally left the room. A pause. And I'm not coming back. So that's it? You're just going to cut us all off? I'm not cutting you off. I'm stepping back. There's a difference. You can call me when you're ready to talk to me like I'm a person, not a punchline. Until then, I have a company to run and a life that doesn't include sitting at table 14. I hung up. Outside, the kid on the bicycle waved at a passing car. Simple. Ordinary. The kind of moment I'd spent 15 years earning the right to have. 3 months later, I stood in a hard hat on 12 acres of cleared land, watching an excavator break ground on the first foundation of Maplewood Commons. Hargrove Brothers had signed the contract within 2 weeks of my initial outreach. They were a family operation out of Ridgemont, 3 brothers, a solid crew, and the kind of handshake-first reputation that Frank Patterson used to have before he started spending money he hadn't earned yet. They came in under budget on the bid and ahead on the timeline. Jolene stood next to me, clipboard in hand, sunglasses on, watching the machines work with the satisfied expression of someone who had been waiting for this moment since we signed our first lease on a foreclosed ranch house in Elmdale 5 years ago. You know what? She said. This is the best one. The best project? The best everything. Best project. Best timing. Best version of you. What was wrong with the old version? Nothing. The old version built this company. The new version gets to enjoy it. I smiled. She wasn't wrong. The Maplewood site hummed with diesel engines and shouted instructions. Concrete trucks lined up on the access road. In 6 months, there would be foundations. In 12, there would be homes. Families would move in, plant gardens, argue about fence heights with their neighbors, and never know that the woman who made it possible had once packed her life into a single bag and walked out of her parents' house with $83. I didn't block my family's numbers. I didn't write a manifesto or post a public statement. I just stopped answering. Boundaries don't always look like walls. Sometimes they look like silence, the kind that's chosen, not imposed. Jolene bumped my shoulder. Lunch? Absolutely. 4 months after the wedding, my father called. I was on my porch with a cup of chamomile tea and a paperback I'd been trying to finish for 3 weeks. The sun was low, throwing long shadows across the yard. I saw his name on the screen and almost set the phone down. But something about the hour, 7:15 on a Tuesday evening, the kind of time when a man has run out of excuses to call and is just left with the reason, made me answer. Thea. Hi, Dad. A long pause. I could hear him breathing. The television was off in the background, which was unusual. My father always had the TV on. It was his shield. I'm not calling about the contract, he said. Okay. Another pause. Longer this time. I'm calling because I need to say something I should have said a long time ago. His voice was thick, not practiced, not polished, just tired and true. I'm sorry for all of it. I set my tea down on the railing, watched a robin hop across the grass. I heard you, Dad. Can you forgive me? I thought about it, really thought about it. Not the quick, reflexive of course that families use to paper over wounds. Not the performative absolution that lets everyone move on without changing. I don't know yet, I said, but I appreciate you calling. He was quiet. Then, that's fair. Yeah,